Next one is, what's the occasion? So I know what's the occasion for this next presentation is how to maximize occasion and opportunities for your brand in 2024 and beyond. Simon Bailey is the senior partner at Kantar Consulting. Please, let's give him a big applause while he's setting up.
Thank you.
Simon, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much. Just let everybody settle down. Just let everybody get settled in before we start. Right, okay. So great to meet everybody. It's the very first time of having done a silent disco type presentation, so I hope that everyone can hear me okay. My name's Simon Bailey. I'm a senior partner at Kantar Consulting, and I hope very much hope that you'll give me the next 15 minutes or so of your time and attention. We will try to finish absolutely on time. As begets the title of this presentation, I also wanted to extend a very warm welcome to everybody on this particular occasion too. So why this topic? Well, we're going to just take a few minutes to look at how to maximize your occasion opportunities. We're going to have a look at that. And we'll finish with just a few tips and ideas for how you get the best out of occasion-led marketing based on our experience in this space over the years. So before we do that, I thought it would be really helpful just to set a little bit of context. So we know at Kantar, for really successful brands that are valuable and enduring, they need to broadly exhibit two key characteristics. The first of those characteristics is that successful brands need to be meaningfully salient. They need to be relevant and memorable in their context. But importantly, they also need to be meaningfully different. That mix of functional and emotional attributes that combine to own a position in the mind of the consumer. And that's fine. But of course, the reason that's important is that before you sits 15 years worth of aggregated data that demonstrates unequivocally that meaningful salience drives volume, it drives demand, and meaningful difference drives pricing power. It drives your ability to drive your margin and sustain a premium over your competitive set. So meaningful salience drives volume, meaningful difference drives pricing power. Okay, fine, that's a point of view which can be validated with the data. But I suppose the question that follows from that always is, well, how? That's all very well, but how do you do that? Well, of course, the answer sits very much in this idea of meaningful difference and meaningful saliency. And it's about creating and executing against human-centric growth. Now, it's an easy thing to say, and of course a much more difficult thing to do. But I think it's worth reminding ourselves, all of us, that that is of course the game that we are in, which is about better understanding our customers so that we can deliver better targeted products and services to change behavior and to get ultimately to spend more of their money and their cash, of course, with us. And at Kantar we have a dynamic occasion-led demand framework that we call Growth Finder that assists us with this challenge. But really importantly, you, me, us, we're not a project, and I think that's quite important. We probably deserve to be elevated to at least the idea of a program, the idea that to deliver relevant products and services, we need to stay connected to our consumers. And so this occasion-led framework will do the following things. First of all, it will give you, of course, a perspective on the demand available in your category. It will enable you to quantify and identify that value. But on top of that, it will also help you with other things too. Done correctly, it will help drive human centricity across your organization and, of course, establish that single version of the truth inside an organization, which people often find very difficult. It can assist you with strategic planning. And again, you have to have a business that has the appetite for that, but done correctly, these tools can influence your strategic planning and your portfolio optimization. You also need to be assisted with activation, and the tool does a really good job of telling you where to play there. It does tracking and measurement, so some of our clients now integrate their tracking data into the Growth Finder tool so that they can see how occasion spaces are evolving, whether they're then getting to a size where they may need to be revisited. And of course, what you don't want to be doing is working with something which was developed in 2016, pre-COVID, to kind of drive the ship today. So this is very much about evolving those spaces. And if we get it right, they can also help us with the predictive element too. So that just kind of sets that up. But ultimately, occasion spaces work because they give us that multi-dimensional view of the consumer occasion. They tell us a little bit about the why, but they also tell us about the how. And they give us that holistic perspective. And our way of doing that typically will involve looking at the universal consumer motivations, looking at the consumer and the facets that are relevant to them, and of course the context in which those things are taking place, which ultimately, quantitatively, will derive a series of occasion spaces that have a value attached to them and that you can decide to use for strategic planning purposes. And because each brand's context is different and each person's mix of 5 Ws will change, those frameworks can look very different from organisation to organisation. But what matters ultimately is that you can capture demand in a simple framework that is big enough for you to be able to do something with it, but not so small that it starts to become a micro segmentation. So that's just an illustrative example, and I will reiterate that. The examples here are illustrative and not from any particular organisation. So why are organisations so powerful? Well, we say there are kind of 2 principal reasons. Number one, the reason occasions are so powerful is that actually very often the easy growth in your category has already been found. So I suspect many of those representing organisations here will know that actually easy growth has gone. And what matters now is understanding how you're going to sustain a competitive advantage to grow. And secondly, occasions help us simplify, understand, and explain why people make the choices they do. And an old colleague of mine always used to remind me of this, that ultimately we're in the game of behaviour change. What we're trying to do is positively inform and influence behaviour so that we get people to be more predisposed to spend money with our products and services. And if you get it right, then you of course get really rich data about each of the occasion spaces that you choose to focus on. So just as an example here, day part, day of the week, needs that sit within the category, who that's with, life stage. All of this contextual information is really, really helpful when it comes to thinking about where to play and ultimately how to win. And if you get it right, you'll be able to turn that information into really rich profiles that our colleagues in marketing want to actually use and deploy. And if there is one message that I would say is really important to convey today, that is that when your framework, your occasion framework is done, that is only about 50% of the job. The other 50% of the job is to make sure that that information is interesting, engaging, informing, and actually is embedded in the rest of the organisation. So that sense that the job isn't done until your colleagues in marketing are taking this information and doing something really constructive with it. So, occasions do help to inform where to play and how to win. They help with targeting, they help with product development and innovation, and they help you with activation. And some of our clients, not all, but some, will also combine that information with shopper mission data to enable them to form a 360-degree view of that shopper journey, which gets powerful. Now, there might be people in the audience sort of still unconvinced about the power of occasions. Well, there's another thought I wanted to just throw to you, which is this. In one of the categories in which we work, we have a lot of expertise in the category, we know that this category, which is now over 100 years old and still evolving, we know that today only about 40% of the total needs identified are being met by the brands in that space today. So there is still a 60% available opportunity for those marketers prepared to do something interesting and extraordinary. So, as I promised, just a few tips to get everybody thinking about how to make occasions work for your brand. So I'd ask you just to keep in mind the following tips. The first one is just to avoid the temptation to create too many occasions. They are there to help people, insights businesses, strategic planners and marketers simplify choice. You need to think about the Goldilocks principle, just right. Not so many spaces that nobody can target them or do anything with them, but not so few that you're restricting the choice and the demand opportunity that's available to you. And time again, we will see those businesses with too many occasions having the counter impact. They are not helping their people focus, they are not helping them with activation, and sometimes they are confusing their teams. So just focus on getting that right, a simple set of addressable spaces. The next thing I think is important is that you use your understanding of the category to identify future sources of value. So an occasion may be big and everybody might be excited about it, but it doesn't necessarily follow that that's the occasion that's right for you and your context and your brand. Take a really strong look at the holistic opportunity and think carefully about where you should place your bets. But there is a value in targeting. So we know, for example, that those brands that tend to focus on one or two key spaces very often return a 2.5 times yield on that target. So it pays to focus. But I will say from experience, and this links to the next point, it is much more helpful to have your occasion-led framework expressed also in terms of dollar, sterling, or euro value, because nothing focuses the C-suite's attention like a number, especially a big number. And I often believe that these spaces, these occasion-led frameworks, don't always permeate the highest levels of an organization when they should be one of the key strategic planning tools. So again, express things in terms of value if you want to get these things noticed and understood. The next point I wanted to make, this is the third of 5 points, is remember that a single brand may be able to stretch across multiple occasions. There is a tendency in this process to think, well, there's a space, I have a brand, I must target every brand at a space. And of course, the brands that we all admire and celebrate know that you only need as fewer brands as you can possibly manage, because actually you should only ever be as efficient as you can be with your brand architecture. So if you can address those needs with the brands you have, don't create more for the sake of it. And there are organizations that intuitively understand this. I would argue that Coca-Cola understands this, that Mars understands this, and that Diageo with brands like Bailey's has a really good understanding of how brands can stretch across occasion spaces. And of course, we also have the analysis and the data to help people come to a clear decision about where ultimately their brand can perform. Just a couple of concluding points. One of them is this, that there is a tendency sometimes to believe that occasion-led marketing is like the physics equivalent of the theory of everything. It can solve every problem. And sometimes it is oversold and overpromoted. And actually, there are many things where a growth finder or an occasion-based tool can be informative, but it needs to be combined with other types of information if you really want to do a fantastic job. So take brand positioning. Yes, in the context of brand positioning, your occasion strategy will reveal rich 5 Ws that can inform your approach, but that needs to be combined with an understanding of culture, the competitive context, sometimes the semiotics that are apparent in the category. And as many of you will know, you have to bring bits of contextual information together to inform your approach. So again, they're very, very helpful, but they do need to be combined with other sources of information too. Just a concluding point here, which is, and you can link your consumptions data so that you can track how motivations are shifting and evolving. Now, I'm not saying that you necessarily need this in real time, because I would think, well, you might struggle to activate that data. But certainly having a 6 months read on what's going on in your category, how occasions are shifting, is very helpful. And that's increasingly possible for clients now, so they can see how things are changing and evolving. Something else just worth considering is that we know from our analysis that in any given category, about 50% of the needs are emotional needs. And as marketeers and insights professionals, it's quite easy and tempting to get focused on the products themselves rather than thinking about how we go back to that point of forming human connections. So again, just to reiterate, don't neglect those emotional needs when you're thinking about how you develop and open up spaces. So just a final Tron-like chart for you to conclude with, which is really just to say, if you place occasions at the heart of your strategy in the right way, you can make the information actionable and you can bolt it into the center, not just of your marketing efforts, but also your strategic planning more generally. Done well, they're a foundation for growth. They help you understand where to play and how to win, but they also tell you what to do, and importantly, how to keep on winning. They are incredibly powerful tools in the right type of category if they're used in the right way. And just to conclude, when I was thinking about this presentation, I was looking at some work by Malcolm McDonald, the famous academic who was at Cranfield University, and he had a quote which I loved, which was this idea that trying to do marketing without segmentation is like trying to build a house without an architect. Well, I personally believe trying in certain categories to run your brand without having some occasion-led framework is a bit like trying to land a plane with no radar and no sense of the destination that you're intending to land at. So again, they can be incredibly powerful, but they need to be approached in the right way. That's it. I promised you we'd finish a minute or two early. I hope you found that informative and interesting.